bragged about my wild past at a party. He looked at me like a stranger and left. I swear I wasn't even drunk yet. That's what makes it worse. So there is no way I could blame it on the alcohol. That night was just supposed to be one of those chill housewarming party/get-togethers with drinks, music, and friends, swapping embarrassing stories for a laugh. I didn't think twice when someone asked about the craziest thing I'd ever done. And for some reason, I went all in. I told them about my wild phase, something I was not supposed to brag about, especially when my husband was present at the party. I feel so horrible right now because the consequences of my actions are eating me up. I don't know how long I'd continue to survive like this. My husband is not even giving me space to breathe. He's suffocating me with revenge, and I need help. I need to know how to soften his mind. I don't want this to be the end of my marriage, although it's looking that way. I think I've suffered enough, and my husband is just not giving up. I'm 27, and my husband is 32, and we recently just got married. That party we attended was a mutual friend's housewarming party/reunion, and he had invited us. It was also our first party as newlyweds. We'd only been married 3 months, still floating in that weird, sweet phase where you're half getting used to saying husband and wife, and half wondering how you got so lucky. We hadn't really done much socially since the wedding. Between work, settling into the apartment, and just enjoying the quiet of our little bubble. So when our friend invited us, it felt like the perfect chance to celebrate with the people who'd been part of our story from the start. That's why things were not supposed to turn out badly, but it did. No matter how wonderful I dreamt of the night to be, it still ended messily. When we first got the invite call, we were so excited because this friend was one of our biggest supporters, and we were so happy for his success. He elevated his life, and all I wanted to do was to be there with my husband and celebrate the moment with him, and also reconnect with our friends since everyone was going to be present. And I clearly understand things from my husband's perspective, because during the years we were dating, I never mentioned my past. My husband had always asked me about my past whenever it came up in conversation. Not like he would just sit down and ask me to talk about my past. More like sometimes, conversation leads to conversations and it would come up, then he would ask me and I never actually let him in. Whenever those questions were asked, I said nothing in return. I always find a way to brush it off or change the topic because I wasn't comfortable telling my boyfriend, now husband, about it. I was scared that if he knew half of the things I did, he would walk away and never look back. I was worried he would look at me differently, and I never wanted any of that to happen. I didn't want to lose him, so I kept it a secret from him. At one point, he thought I had a rough past and apologized to me for pushing me hard, and told me he was okay with not knowing if I wasn't comfortable telling him about it. That whenever I felt like talking about it, then he would be there, ready to listen. I felt bad, though, especially because he had told me everything about his past, but what could I have done? There was nothing to be done then, so I just played the card he handed me. I became a victim of an unfortunate past situation, and use it that way at my disposal. Gosh, I went too far. I feel it now, even as I'm writing this post. He didn't deserve any of that. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I did worse, and I know it was so cruel of me. I think it was also during that period that he also suggested that I should go see a therapist because I was always acting weird anytime the word past came up, and that he thought I'd be comfortable with sharing it with a therapist. It was at this point that I broke down in tears. I told him I wasn't comfortable sharing that part of myself with a stranger. And it was not because I wasn't comfortable telling that made me not say it, but because it was too difficult to say. He told me it was okay, and that I don't need to say anything till I'm okay with it, and that it was insensitive of him to ask me to do that. That's when I spilled everything. I opened up, except they were all lies. I thought it was safer playing the victim than the culprit. It made more sense that way. It was easier to pretend I was a victim and not the cause of anyone's problem. So I broke down crying. It's not like I had this in mind all along, but once I started, I just kept going. I said my past was rough. And I told them I had a partner who cheated on me constantly. Not just once, not just twice, but all the time. Then I added that he didn't just cheat, he abused me, domestically and sexually. I made it sound like it had been years of hell. After that, I stated that that's why it was always so hard for me to talk about my past. I said that even just mentioning it feels like I'm tearing open an old wound. That I don't share that kind of information with anyone, because it's too personal, too painful. I made sure to pause between sentences, like I was trying to hold myself together but barely could. Then I looked at him and I said I was glad he had made me comfortable enough to share this with him. I said it meant a lot to me. I let my voice shake and then I cried harder. I kept thanking him over and over for loving me, for showing me what true love actually is. I told him that's why I've been able to heal. And the truth is, I was making it all up. I wasn't telling him the truth about my past. I was saying it because I knew it would get a reaction. I wanted him to feel closer to me, to protect me more, and to see me as someone he had saved. Because knowing my past might do the opposite. He comforted me exactly how a good partner would. He didn't question me for a second. Then he wrapped his arm around me and pulled me close. He kept rubbing my back in slow circles, and he kissed the top of my head. Then he told me I didn't need to explain anything else, and saying that I was strong and that I was safe now. He told me no one would ever hurt me again as long as he was here. I love how those words sounded. I loved the reassurance. He was already good before this. Too good, honestly. He's the kind of man who remembers what I like to eat and makes it for me without asking. The kind of man who checks if my car has gas before I go anywhere. The kind of man who puts my comfort first, always. And after I told that story, he was even more attentive. He kept his arm around me the rest of the night. He didn't let me lift a finger. If I looked like I needed something, he got it before I even asked. Then he told me again how proud he was, that I trusted him enough to share that with him. He said he wished I never had to go through something like that, but that he was glad he could be here now. Then he tucked me into bed and asked if I wanted tea, water, or anything to help me sleep. He stayed up next to me until I fell asleep. He was holding my hand when I drifted off. I'm even ashamed as I'm saying this now. I don't know why I went that far. I needed a story to sell so it wouldn't look suspicious, and that was what I thought of at the moment. Please don't judge me. I know what I did was bad. I should have told him the truth then, but instead I chose to create one. I knew exactly how it would land. I knew he would believe me, and he would react like a good man reacts, protective, loving, and gentle. And I knew it would make him hold me tighter, treat me softer, and look at me like I'd been through hell and survived. And it worked. He didn't look at me with doubt. He just believed me, 100% because that's who he is. He's the kind of man who will take your pain and carry it for you without question. And I used that. Now looking back, I know it was wrong. Wrong of me to play with his emotions. I know I made him feel this heavy, awful sadness for me over something that never even happened. It wasn't fair of me to let him think he was helping me heal from a nightmare when, really, there was nothing to heal from. The horrible thing is, he probably loved me even more now because of it. He thought we'd shared some deep, life-changing moments. He thought I've trusted him with something no one else knows. And I just sat there letting him think that, knowing very well it's a lie I created for no reason other than it suited me in that moment. And I couldn't take it back. I played along with it every single day, and now things have gotten messy. With everything I'm going through right now, I know now that I shouldn't have lied about my past to my husband because I didn't want him to know the truth. Then, bragging about the truth at the party, I didn't think it would turn into this. As much as that party was a housewarming party, it was also like a get-together in a way. It was filled with all our friends, familiar faces, like a kind of place where you can freely have the kind of easy conversations that only happen when you're around people who've known you for years. So we arrived there hand in hand, smiling at everyone, getting hugs and congratulations all over again. For most of the night, we stayed close, laughing at old stories and catching up with friends we hadn't seen since before the wedding. Since it wasn't rowdy, the atmosphere felt safe and comfortable. And that's why I didn't think twice when the conversation shifted and someone asked about the wildest thing we'd ever done. We took turns, and everyone was just being all open and genuine, and I felt connected in a way, and I didn't even know when I opened my mouth and bragged about my past. That's the thing about lies. When you've told them long enough, you forget which version you told to who. Everyone at that table was being sincere, opening up about their own lives, and I got caught up in it. I completely forgot the story I'd told my husband before, so I started talking, and out came the truth. The real truth, not the version I'd fed him, but exactly how things happened. That's the hookups and the stupid dares. And I thought I was killing it because I mistook everyone's wowed face for an impressed one. The hookups were just part of it. Back then, I didn't care about the consequences. I slept with guys I barely knew, sometimes after knowing them for less than an hour. Half the time I didn't even remember their names the next day, and I never kept track, so I honestly can't tell you my body count. If someone asked me now, I wouldn't even know where to start counting. I couldn't even give you an estimate without lying. I was the type to take stupid dares just to get a reaction. So, nights out always turned into dares. You know, flashing strangers from a car window, making out with someone's boyfriend just because a friend dared me to, and jumping into a stranger's hot tub at a party we weren't even invited to, and sneaking into places we weren't supposed to be. It was all about the thrill. And yeah, I even used to steal from retail stores for fun. This was not because I needed anything. I just liked the rush. Lip gloss, cheap jewelry, shirts I'd never even wear. Anything I could grab without getting caught. I got so used to it that it felt normal, like some kind of game I was good at. Then it got bigger. Hoodies, makeup palettes, even lingerie. I knew which stores didn't have cameras in certain corners. I knew how to slip things into a big purse without looking suspicious. Sometimes I'd do it with friends, and other times alone. I did a lot of other things you wouldn't imagine, but I'll stop there. So that was my life then. Reckless, impulsive, and always looking for the next stupid thing to do. And it wasn't until I looked at my husband and saw the confusion in his face that I realized I'd just blown up my own lie. Then he just stormed out of the party. The mood of the party instantly changed, and everyone started looking at me like I was a terrible person. Some of the friends nearby had these mixed reactions. A couple of the women just looked surprised, like they didn't expect sweet newlywed me to have a past like that. One guy laughed under his breath, clearly entertained, but also sizing me up differently now. One of the younger girls leaned away from me, like she wasn't sure if I was joking or serious. You could tell some were judging, others were curious, and a few were already thinking about how they'd retell this later. And I totally understand their reactions because I was presenting this sweet, innocent front everywhere. And I was introduced into the friendship group by my husband when we started dating, so everyone always thought of me as a sweet, innocent soul that couldn't even hurt a fly, not knowing it was a mask. I was still a little bit wild when we started dating, during the first year when I did sneak around, but I changed because that was not the kind of woman my husband needed. And I didn't want to risk anything, especially when I was almost caught one day by his friend. Honestly, his love changed me. He cared about having a good reputation, and I just dropped everything else that was against that. But now, how do I convince him otherwise, especially after I have lied to him? I didn't know what to do. I felt like a stranger to everyone. I just ran after my husband, but he had already left the premises. I took a taxi back home, and when I got there, my husband was leaving the house, and he was with some of his clothes. I'm sure he was confused because he didn't know which version of my past was real or fake, and I understood his anger. I held the hem of his shirt and fell to my knees, begging him to not leave the house and that I promised to tell him the truth, but he just forcefully moved, and I fell to the floor. I cried profusely throughout that night. I called him several times, but he wasn't responding, and none of our friends were picking up. It's like everyone just totally ignored me. Days later, he returned, and when he walked in, I quickly ran to him, stating I was worried about him, and then I asked for a chance to talk, but then he didn't say a word. He gave me a dead stare before walking away to sit on the couch. Due to the atmosphere, I sat right across from him, hoping he would say a word to me, but he was just scrolling through his phone. Next, I received a notification from our group chat and saw evidence of the past life. Not all of them, but most of them that were still traceable and painful enough. It was my husband who shared them right in front of me, with a text of the lies I'd fed him with. Our friends started cursing and calling me a devil. Tears were just flowing freely from my eyes, and I was just shifting focus from my phone screen to my husband's face. He wasn't even looking at me. I was honestly shocked by his actions. He was still focused on his phone, and the next thing, he started laughing. I knew it was because of the messed up things that were aimed at me. I was visibly shaking. Then I closed my eyes to accept the fate of my actions, and before I opened them, I was verbally abused and then thrown out of the group, saying I wasn't worth to be their friends if I could do that to my husband and them. Then, I received a text from my father stating that there's an urgent family meeting and I was needed because my mother just fainted. My mother has always been dramatic, and I knew something bad must have happened to make my dad say this. I asked my husband for a ride, but he still didn't say a word to me, and I left because given my mother's health condition, I didn't want to delay a second. So I rushed there. I didn't care about what was happening to me. I just wanted to be there for my mother first, then I'd come and settle things with my husband. But when I arrived there, surprisingly, my mother was not unconscious. She was conscious and breathing. It was just that she was crying and being all dramatic. Everyone, including my siblings, had sat down around a table and 2 empty seats were left. I was scared because I didn't understand what was happening. My father instructed me with a stern voice that I should sit down, and I did. Everyone was looking at me weirdly, and my mother kept being all dramatic and saying weird things to God. A few minutes later, my husband arrived, and I was more than shocked to see him there. He took the last empty seat. Before I could ask what was going on, my mother jumped in and asked me why my husband was speaking of divorce after a few months of marriage. My eyes widened, and I turned to look at my husband because he never actually mentioned anything like that to me. Obviously, he was mad at me, but divorce? I never thought it would result in that. I only lied, and that is exactly what I told my mother. I lied, and that a lie was not enough for my husband to ask for divorce, and it's even more shocking because that was the first time I heard that word. Then, my husband said that if a lie isn't worth the divorce, then I should tell my parents the content of the lies. I told him that it was between us, our problem, and not a family issue. So he shouldn't bring my parents into it. I was not ready to be stripped naked in front of my parents who always saw me as their favorite, or in front of siblings who I was judgmental to. I told my family that I was sorry for worrying them, and that we would settle our issues at home and there was no need to worry about us, and that my husband was just annoyed and acted on his emotions. Then I asked my husband to leave with me, but this man refused. He started narrating the whole incident to my family and even showed them the evidence. He added that he had to do his research because he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Then my mother started crying and lamenting. She started saying things like, what did she do so wrong to deserve this? And that her only crime was giving birth to me. That hurts me a lot. My siblings mocked me. I mean, that was a great opportunity for them. I didn't even know what to do. I just kept saying, I'm sorry. My husband bid them goodbye and left. That's when my father's scolding started. He said horrible things to me and how he was so ashamed of me, and from that moment that I was not longer his daughter. I kept crying and begging them and telling them that I was a changed person, but no one listened to me, and my siblings didn't even help matters. And my mother stopped crying at that point and said if I'm truly changed then, I wouldn't have lied to my husband, and that the only way she would forgive me is if I prevent the divorce from happening because she couldn't bear the weight of that. Then she ended her scolding by telling me to get out of her sight and make sure I amend my ways and protect my marriage instead of sitting there crying. So I left, and I was just praying and hoping that this divorce topic was just a scare and a threat and nothing more. When I stopped to get something to eat since I haven't had food yet and was barely strong enough to have a conversation with her husband, I realized he restricted my access to our joint accounts, and that made me know that maybe he wasn't actually joking about the divorce. He was actually trying to cut me off, so I went home. I didn't care about strength anymore. His forgiveness was more needed at that moment. When I arrived home, my husband was burning our wedding pictures, photo album, and other stuff we had together as couple. I weakened at the sight of this, and I fall to the ground wailing, but he just sighed and walked past me. Then, when I was able to get up and go meet him at the house, I met my belongings outside with divorce papers. He was clearly not joking. I begged and begged, but he didn't say anything. I didn't even know who to vent to or cry to because I literally lost all my friends. That's why I'm just here venting and trying to see if there's anything I can do to save my marriage. Update. All I've ever known up until sharing this update is tears, pain, and heartache. I couldn't save my marriage. My ex-husband refused to change his mind, no matter how much I begged him, and I couldn't return to my parents' house. They said they don't want me back and that I'm nothing more than a shame to them, so I ended up at an old friend's place, the one I used to hang out with during my reckless days before I met my husband. She had a laugh, but I promise, I'm not going back to my old ways anymore. I know better now, and I have to find a way to redeem myself.